MultimediaJay radio style.
Did I call it, or did I call it yesterday with that whole Powerball thing? Did I call it or what? 3 people won the jackpot. In the entire country, mind you. California, Tennessee, Florida, yippity-doo-dah. There's parties going on in those states, maybe. But yeah, there were 3 Powerball winners. It's quite interesting as I've continued to think about this whole Powerball fiasco. I'm not going to wrap things up. I'm not going to make this a main topic, of course, but just some last remarks on the whole matter. First and foremost, they got to split the winnings, so it's not like, $1.5 billion could be yours. Well, it turned out to not even be close to that. And then the IRS will knock them down quite a few pegs before we get to the state and municipal taxes, whatever else applies, and things like that. But as far as the Powerball thing goes, there were some notable details that were missing in all the commentary that the media and everybody else that was opining on this was talking about. For example, the odds that were being passed around, 1 in 292 million. That was merely the mathematical odds that you yourself could guess the winning combination. It's just you. It says absolutely nothing about whether or not you would have to share your winnings if someone else won. I wonder how much higher those odds would be if you want to start talking about you not only winning the jackpot, but you getting the whole jackpot because nobody else won. But I didn't really see that in the news coverage. People didn't want to talk about that for some reason. I wonder why. But anyways, as if the odds weren't ridiculous enough as it is, 3 people won. If the news even covers what happens to these 3 people afterwards, I'd be rather interested in seeing what the aftermath of all of this is, but I'm not going to count on it. The hysteria is over, the hype is over, and I probably shouldn't even be talking about it if I want to get any views, but whatever. I also wanted to take note of the tax situation. One of those if I ruled the world type things. I was talking about, what if I won that jackpot? What if I won it and nobody else? And I was, taking the annuity and stuff. I was thinking about it some more, and I was like, you know what? That makes your tax situation a lot more complicated, because now you're pretty much guaranteed to be in the highest tax bracket for the rest of, in my case, the rest of my working life. So I'd be guaranteed to be in the highest tax bracket for the next 30 years, which would make the tax situation a lot more complicated because, well, the tax situation would be a lot more complicated because the standard deduction is only a couple $1,000s, and when you got millions coming in, you're getting socked at the maximum tax, tax bracket. That's not good, or not good at all. So I imagine there probably would be a downside, even if it was cool. If I could make the money work somehow, if I won that kind of a jackpot, there'd probably be a downside to it. Not trying to make a Midas touch story out of all of this, but that's what seems to be there. That's what seems to exist in this case. It seems like there's definitely some kind of catch to this in terms of, well, everything. But that's the way life is. Sometimes things just aren't as they seem. I don't want to be talking about the Powerball anymore, though. That ship has sailed, and I don't really follow lotteries all that much anyways. I want to talk about some stuff related to gaming, specifically emulation, and how I think it's going to have an effect not only on console and PC gaming, but it's basically come into its own light. You could say that the emulation scene has won long-term when it comes to how people enjoy their video games. So I went to play some Shovel Knight a while back, and I busted out the NES controller with the USB adapter because I was like, I went and bought this USB adapter. I can play Shovel Knight with a real Nintendo controller. Let's do so, and let's enjoy this game the way it obviously was meant to be enjoyed. I fired up Shovel Knight, and the NES controller was stiff. Stiff as all heck. I was like, whoa, I don't remember these things being this stiff. So I just chalked it up to maybe the controller's getting old. But then tonight, I went to play my Super Retro Trio. I just basically went to, I was rearranging some controllers, and I found the controllers, the Retro-Bit controllers that came with it, and I was like, let's fire that up. Let's fire up the old Super Retro Trio in Super Nintendo mode, play some Mario All-Stars, see how close this controller is to the real deal. The controller was flimsy, so I was like, okay, that's it, uncle. I gotta bring in the real Super Nintendo controller. So I brought in the Super Nintendo controller, and that was stiff as well. It was horrible. It almost didn't even feel like I was holding a controller. And so I'm here just dumbfounded because here I am insisting on the real deal, with a hardware Famiclone, because I do still have my original Super Nintendo, but it's unfortunately a yellow-bottomed one, and the original SNES didn't do S-Video out, so I basically went to the Super Retro Trio to up those graphics capabilities. But basically, I went to play a classic game that I knew ice cold, Super Mario All-Stars, Super Mario Bros. 3, World 1, and I was having trouble because the controller was too stiff. Now, I'm open to the idea that maybe the rubber and whatnot in controllers is like the it's like the leather in a baseball glove. If it sits too long, it gets stiff and you gotta break it back in. But I'm also open to the idea that a console whose prime was a quarter century ago, yeah, boy, will that make some people feel old. A console that's that old probably can suffer from the kind of creeping decrepitude that the rest of us suffer from as we age as well, and I'm simply open to the idea, sadly, that these SNES controllers can just get old. And as much as they were very well built in their time period, in their era, so to speak, they can get old just like us, and they can maybe start to lose, how nice they feel as a controller. They can get old just like the rest of us. And this really got me thinking, because I'm hearing the stories about the Nintendo NX, and I'm like, do I really want to get this box or not? I mean, I skipped the PS4 and stuck with PS3 because PS3 is basically my Sony box. If I want to get PS1 Classics or pop in a PlayStation 1 disc and basically make the memory card on the hard drive on the unit, I can do so. And so that's basically what I do. It's kind of like my Sony box for games that would cost a ton of money if I tried to hunt down real copies of. So I use the PlayStation Store, and essentially they're emulator boxes, quite frankly. Yeah, Final Fantasy. I do have Final Fantasy VIII because I was able to buy it new without getting gouged, but that's going into gouge territory with prices. I probably, if I wanted to get Final Fantasy VII and play the PlayStation version of the original Final Fantasy VII, it would have to be through the PlayStation Store, because the PlayStation disc is probably through the roof because of the mystique that FF7 has for whatever reason. I think a lot of I'm actually shocked that Final Fantasy VI hasn't gotten a 3D remake yet. I can't think of any way of Square Enix doing justice to Final Fantasy than bringing 6 into the world of 3D. So all these 7 fanboys who thought 7 was so awesome because it was 3D can finally shut up after all these years and see the superior story that FF6 had with its empire and the world nearly getting destroyed, and freaking Kefka, for crying out loud. But I digress. A lot of what I have my consoles for nowadays is to play back catalogs of software that I still enjoy. The Super Retro Trio can do NES, SNES, Genesis, as well as Game Boy Advance with the Super Retro Advance add-on, and Game Boy Classic games with the Super Game Boy that I still have from childhood. My PlayStation 2 handles the PS2 library. PlayStation 3 handles PS3 as well as PS1, as well as anything downloadable from the PlayStation Store. The Wii, I have one of the old GameCube ones, which unfortunately had problems with its graphics chip, so I used the Wii as a GameCube player, and that's pretty much it. The Wii U upscales Wii games and plays Wii U and eShop and Virtual Console as well. And then the PC, which my Steam account and GOG accounts can go from computer to computer, depending on the machine, can play various games as well. But that's what it's turning into. I talk about consoles turning into crappy gaming PCs, but I think both consoles and PCs are turning into essentially emulator boxes. And then you have what Microsoft is doing with the Xbox One, where they're adding backward compatibility for Xbox 360, and people are finding out, backward compatibility isn't just a gimmick feature. These old consoles from the previous generations are going to get old. They're going to stop working, especially the newer ones with the more moving parts because they spin discs around and stuff like that. Yeah, unfortunately, not everything's going to be built like a tank like the cartridge systems of yore. Eventually, we're going to need new hardware. And in the case of the controllers, what if the controllers start getting stiff because the rubber starts to harden after X amount of years? Or maybe you have something where things started yellowing, and when plastic starts to yellow, it's not just the ugly appearance of it, the chemical makeup of the plastic is actually changing, and it can actually become more brittle because of the chemical reactions that cause plastic to yellow in the first place. So if creeping decrepitude eventually claims us all, so to speak, and that will include our video game consoles, we need to be open to the idea that, should we really be attached to always playing Super Mario World with an original Super Nintendo controller? I mean, what about, say, a Wii U Pro controller? It's a very nice, comfortable controller. It's got a nice D-pad. It's got a nice set of buttons. It's got some triggers for L and R. It's got select and start, something that can function as it anyways. I mean, what would be wrong with playing Super Mario World with a Wii U Pro controller? Because it's a classic game now, and it's going to play on whatever the Nintendo box happens to be. Wii U, maybe the NX will pick up where the Wii U left off, or maybe Nintendo will get smart and add both GameCube and Wii backward compatibility as well as Wii U to the NX. Make it the one Mario box you have to have in your living room, you want to have in your living room, and I guarantee you it will sell. Just like Microsoft and the Xbox One. Yeah, it's the weakest console. It's the weakest console compared to PS4. However, put a lot of Xbox stuff in it. Make it the Microsoft box you want to have in your living room if you want to play the library of Microsoft games from throughout the ages. And of course, PS4, PS3, PS2, PS1. Sony, if they could get backward compatibility going on the PS4 for 3, 2, and 1, that would be amazing. That would be the one box that I would have. I would even forgive Sony for bowing to the Microsoft business model for charging for the online part of games. And here's the thing. The consoles are in enough of a defensive state as it is, simply because of the progress of technology and what PCs have been doing in the last couple of years and all of these great ideas that PC gaming has come up with that are bleeding over into the world of consoles. And what has happened with PCs? What has happened with PCs? They come in all different shapes and sizes nowadays. You got stuff like the Alienware Alpha, which is basically a PC shaped like a console. If you don't want to get socked with Alienware prices, you can build something similar with an HTPC case. We're getting to the point where even your laptops, your non-gaming laptops, will be able to play up to games with the fidelity of the Xbox 360 and PS3. So, computers are catching up fast. And with Valve pushing for standardization of peripherals with the Steam controller and stuff, as well as Microsoft with the X-input compatible controllers. I know I've certainly been buying up closeout 360 controllers to play PC games on. With the more of the crossover between console and PC, there's bound to be some ideas going from PC back to the consoles. And one of them is undoubtedly going to be the Steam effect. Not too long ago, I fired up Steam and I bought Psychonauts, even though I already have it on PS2, because I would love to play the game in 1080p, even though the graphics are going to be early 2000s no matter what. I'm kind of torn on whether I want to get Beyond Good and Evil on PC, or just play the Beyond Good and Evil HD that's on my PS3 already. So the games library, now with GOG coming into its own with some of the more classic stuff and the older stuff, including DOS games that come with a DOSBox emulator already preset for that game, so you can play old DOS games in a Steam-like setup, and heck, even use the non-Steam game feature in Steam to bring it into your Steam library and cycle over to it in big picture mode. I seriously, backward compatibility, it's got to become mandatory. Sorry. It used to be a nice what if, but in the world of PCs, you've got all this stuff going back so far. You can have your entire collection on there. And if you don't mind messing with PC emulators, you can go way back. Matter of fact, there are some of the JRPGs that I tend to be fans of, or a fan of. What am I talking about? Some of the JRPGs are probably games that are emulated all the heck because there never was a US release. I can think of Seiken Densetsu 3, Lennis 2 as two good examples of that. I have Lennis 1's North American release known as Paladin's Quest on the SNES, but Lennis 2 never came to America. It's got to be a patched ROM if you don't speak Japanese. So, but this isn't really a discussion about emulation, but I really think that emulation is emulator boxes is going to become something that not only PCs but consoles try to be like. Oh yeah, you play all the nice new stuff on whatever box you have in your living room or box is or whatever, but you need to be able to play the whole catalog and not have to keep having all these boxes going every which way unless you want to be a collector and have every single console ever. But quite frankly, the convenience of account-based gaming and the fact that the Turd Shiba that I bought in the spring of last year can already do quite a bit of gaming at 1080p, low settings. I haven't tried 720 yet. If it can do competent 720, gaming, then we're talking about a non-gaming laptop that is essentially the PC answer to the 360 or PS3. So the budget piece of junk laptop from just 2015 last year is essentially up to the last generation of gaming consoles. You know, and a lot of folks were talking about when the Wii U was being developed and now the NX and stuff, or no, the current consoles, the Xbox One, the PS4. People were saying that when those consoles were in development, they better hurry up and release them or mobile's going to squash them, because tablets and smartphones were getting some oomph in the gaming department as well. But PCs aren't doing all that bad. I mean, I was looking at an Asus desktop last Christmas season. $300-something, just have a graphics card to pop into that sucker. And then, quite frankly, you're in business. Yeah, and there's some videos on that where the person saying, yeah, well, you know, you could technically put a graphics card in an off-the-shelf system, but it's still better to build your own. Yeah, well, if you want to be completely in charge of what's in your box, it's better to build your own. If you're just getting started and you just want something, putting a graphics card inside an off-the-shelf system with the graphics card slot and the power supply to support it is perfectly viable. What's out there nowadays, even at entry-level prices, has more than enough mathematical capability that it just needs a little bit of graphics oomph to get you into PC gaming. Then go find those wired 360 controllers that nobody wants because people hate wires, plug it in, and just sit on the couch across from the PC. Find some way to disguise it if you don't want it to look too much like an office computer from the 90s. But it's doable. That's the thing. And so, it's not just PC either. We're going to see this with consoles. Just you watch. If consoles want to remain relevant, yeah, they're going to have new releases. So's everything out there. People are always going to be talking about whatever game they happen to sink whatever amount of money on. But this is the thing. There's so much stuff out there. There's so much good stuff now from so many generations. Unless you're... Oops. Watch the mic. There's so much stuff... Oh, I am recording in rather cramped quarters nowadays, but there's so much good stuff out there that all you have to do is, you know, you may not get to it all, or it may take you a while to get to certain games and certain platforms. And if you really believe all this stuff people say, like, graphics don't make the game, if you really believe that, then maybe you'd go play some catch-up with older stuff later. Or, in my case, I missed most of the PlayStation 2 era, you know, when I was off in college. So, here I am still nowadays. I can buy new PlayStation 2 games and have them be new experiences. Pop them in the PS2 Slim, fire them up. I just got Star Ocean Till the End of Time not too long ago. Yet another JRPG that hopefully I can dig up the time to play or something like that. But, seriously, with some of the older games on Steam and some of the older games on GOG, if there's a classic that you missed or something you're curious about that only costs a couple of dollars, what's to say that people can't be all over the place when it comes to games? Just like what happened with music, by the way. I mean, the decades thing with music, well, by the time I was in high school, for crying out loud, there was people listening to all kinds of decades of music. There's people that loved 60s, people that loved 70s, people that loved 80s, and even, well, people who loved the new stuff in the 90s as we approach the millennium. But, yeah, people like what they like, and sometimes we're smart enough as a species to throw off this social mythos we have that old always equals bad, which isn't the case. Old is not always bad. If something holds up well and is still enjoyable nowadays, like a video game from 30 years ago or whatever that's still playable and still enjoyable, why not enjoy it? And so that's really something to think about as we continue this reshuffle between consoles, PCs, mobile continues to happen. I really think that the emulator box is the new standard because, yeah, you play the new stuff, and if you're interested in the old stuff, it's very convenient to go check it out, and you're not going to get smacked by some eBay gouger or flea market gouger who thinks that everybody still wanting to buy cartridge games these days must be a collector that wants all of them and will pay anything to have that big bookshelf of NES carts to record YouTube videos in front of. I'm not one of those people. Oh, excuse me. My cartridge... Now I'm slamming the glasses into the microphone. I gotta do something about this cramped setup. Or maybe I shouldn't do the closet trick with this stuff. Who knows? Yeah, anyways. Yeah. Oh, yeah. My cartridge games are actually in a drawer, and they're not visible unless I open the drawer up. So I don't have them on shelves or anything. So I'm kind of the polar opposite of people that do that stuff. So something to think about. Definitely something to think about. Because, the emulator box plays the new stuff, and if you want the old stuff, it's real easy to get to. Expect that to become a standard if we want gaming platforms to remain competent in the years to come. Thanks for listening, everybody. Till next time, this is MultimediaJay signing off. Thanks for stopping by.